I'm so grateful that we chose this path of cooking, nutrient dense whole foods and emphasizing those, because my kids are really healthy. They're really healthy, and often in ways that their peers are not. For example, um, my oldest son has perfect teeth, right? Like no cavities, room for his wisdom teeth. His teeth are completely straight. Like we took him to the dentist, and like she's calling people in because it's unusual, right? To have good quality teeth. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that we emphasize nutrient dense whole foods throughout his childhood. Namely, these are foods that are rich in vitamins and minerals that help support systemic health. And part of that is, tooth and mouth health.
Mamas, I can help you improve your family's health with my 5-week online course, Real Food, Real Families. It even has 5 weeks worth of meal plans. So check out nourishthelittles.com and use the code NTL10 for 10% off. Welcome to Modern Ancestral Mamas. We are Corey and Christine, two millennial moms on a mission to bring ancestral wisdom to modern motherhood. Okay, parents of athletes, we have a great episode for you today, all about nourishing your high-performing athlete. We have another episode, which we recorded with Kelsey Moore, so make sure to check that one out. And our guest today is one of the OGs of ancestral cooking. I know that personally, I was using her blog and her books a ton when I first started along this healing journey. And she was a huge source of inspiration for me. Corey, what do you say? The same?
Yeah, totally the same. My mom had, I guess, your first cookbook. And I remember reading through that like before I'd really even started. Like we were doing paleo and stuff, but we weren't including any of the like grains or dairy or anything. And so I remember reading your book, and then I remember getting it from the library again at some point during this like whole, time of trying to learn all the things. Thank you for writing that.
Oh, I'm so grateful.
The big mystery is who
I'm so grateful that it was helpful. Like, I really am.
Oh,
it's exciting to me when people cook the recipes or that it's helped them or fueled their interest in ancestral cooking and local foodways.
Okay, guys, our guest today is Jenny McGruther of Nourished Kitchen. Yay!
All right, so we start every episode, Jenny, with a ice-breaking question.
All right.
And so we'll all answer it. And if you want to start, you can. If you don't want to start, one of us can start. But the question for today is, if you had to pick one sport to do just for fun, not for competition, what would it be?
Well, I'm not much of an athlete, but I would say of all the like recreation, I love hiking and swimming. Those are awesome. It's got to be beautiful mountainside, mountain lake, and then I'm in.
Are you swimming in the mountain lake, or are you swimming in a pool?
I like to swim in natural bodies of water.
See, where I live, natural bodies of water freak me out. There are far too many snakes and alligators.
Good reason. Yeah, you've got some pretty
there's
big
some
predators.
gnarly creatures that live in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're not clear. They're like brown. So who knows what's lurking?
I don't know. That would wig me out.
Yeah. I'm all about a pool. Okay, I'm going to go next. So when I was a kid, we had all these kids in our neighborhood, and we would play kickball on, like, there was one day a week, I can't remember what it was, but it was like a day of the week that we played kickball in my backyard, and it was so fun. And then, but like as an adult, kickball would be fun, but I'm not going to like go join a kickball league. But I have started recently started finding YouTube videos for like dancing workouts, and they've been so much fun. So they're like 80s music dance workout or early 90s pop dance workout, like this kind of thing. And they're a blast. Totally I'm not a huge, I don't like working out all that much, but like if I could do that, it's right up my alley. All right, Christine.
I feel like I was going to ask a specific question. Is it something that you already know how to do?
Put whatever parameters you want on this.
Okay. I don't know. I kind of liked both of your answers. I liked the hiking answer. I would never do hiking competitively, but
no, it's not competitive.
No, I know. Okay. Not competitive. Yeah. I think I would probably go with hiking.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hiking and horseback riding, actually.
Ooh.
Those would be the two things that I would do all day if I could.
I love horseback riding.
I love horseback riding too.
Like, would you rather do like just trail riding, so it's kind of the same as hiking except on a horse? Or are you talking like you want to go do jumps like in a course and stuff?
I did jumping
like
as a child.
Hunting.
I know, right? So I did do jumping as a child. I think probably just trail riding.
Yeah.
But being able to canter and gallop when I want.
Right. That's the problem with horseback riding. If you don't have your own horse, like if you go to one of those horseback riding adventure things, they're like, and now you have to follow me at a very, placid walk. And
yeah, too much liability.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Let's get going. So our whole conversation today is a part of this mini series that we have going on fueling young student athletes or fueling young athletes. And I put out a call on my Instagram that was like, we need more people to be a part of this, this mini series. And Jenny, you actually reached out to me and you said I could talk about this, which is awesome. And I really would not have known because we wanted to have you on the show regardless. And it's one of those things where it's like you have this list of people and you're a little bit intimidated to ask them. And then you're like, hey, I can talk about student athletes. I'm like, heck yes, let's go. I'm pretty sure I could text Christine. I was like, you will not believe this. So how about let's start with the basic question of how many kids you have, what ages are they, what sports have they done, that sort of thing.
So I have two children. I have one who is 19 and I have one who is 8. So quite a big split right there. And my 19-year-old he's always been a super active physical person, right? And so in terms of sports, he started off skiing. So we put him on skis when he was 18 months old. No joke. That was the first time he was on a pair of skis. So he's been skiing since about the time he could walk. And then soccer, he was into soccer from age 4, and then did that, the spring, soccer leagues with all the cut up oranges and the no, the relaxed approach that you see in springtime recreational soccer. And then when he hit middle schoolish, he was doing soccer competitively, playing soccer competitively, in a club, and then did varsity soccer all throughout high school. And then his senior year, he's like, oh, and I also want to go do cross country. So by the end, he was doing skiing in the winter, cross country, during the fall, soccer in the spring, and in the off season, he's like, I think I'm going to go for a hike today. And I'm like, okay, honey, where are you going? Oh, it's just going to be 20 miles up this ridge. And I'm like, so he's a physical kid, with an interest in multiple sports. For my youngest, he did jujitsu for a while, and he is starting his soccer path as well because he wants to be like his big brother, soccer and skiing.
Oh,
that's so sweet. I have a kid that does jujitsu too. And she absolutely refuses to go. She's does not want to get competitive with it, which is so strange. She just wants to do it for fun, which is great. But also I don't know. It's a little weird to me. Okay, so you have like 3 sports for your oldest that you're dealing with in different seasons. Is that right?
Yes.
They're all different seasons.
Yeah. 3 sports.
That's kind of nice. At least it's not,
right. It
you're
doesn't
not trying to balance multiple sports at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're definitely spread out across the seasons. And, it's just straight up, it made the kid happier. He was always at his happiest when he was physically challenged. And it makes me happy to see my child happy, right? And so yes, interest in multiple sports all across, and some are team and some are individual, like skiing. And he was always happiest when he was really physically challenged, and I think that's the case for a lot of kids. I think about the way the kids are kind of bundled up within the school system and don't have a lot of physical outlets, and for my part, or for our family, having those physical outlets for our children all day long, not just in the afternoons, but all day long, was really important for their, I think, health and mental well-being.
Well, so since this whole series is about how to feed athletes, we kind of wanted to preface it a little bit with what's going on in today's modern world when it comes to feeding athletes. And I think that a few of the subjects we want to cover are: what are the most nourishing foods to feed them versus what we're seeing in after school or like after soccer games, the pirate booty or the fruit roll-ups or the Gatorade. Just like, it appears right now that the norm is to just feed them junk food post a game. And then we also want to dive into a little bit of, maybe we can talk about injuries as well, or I don't know how much this would apply to a boy, but a little bit of the body image stuff tied into athletics. And yeah, is there anything else that we wanted to cover as far as athletes are concerned, Corey?
I am sure we'll get to all sorts of things. Where do you want to start, Christine?
Jenny, why don't you share with us a little bit about when he was younger, how you would feed him, and sort of walk us through all of that till today?
Yeah. So we started our approach to like ancestral foods and traditional cooking, heritage cooking, when he was about 9 months old. And so from infancy all through his early childhood and into his teenage years, we took an approach that was intensely seasonal, whole foods based, and included a lot of grass-fed and pasture-raised meats, a lot of grass-fed dairy. What else? The whole gamut: sourdough breads, slow cooked broths. When he was, like 4, his favorite foods, no joke, were fried chicken livers and sour Reuben, which is fermented turnips and watermelon. So those are the foods that he grew up on.
Oh.
Right. And I think that really kept him healthy all throughout those early formative years. As he, grew up, we were presented with our own challenges about cultural foods, foods that are popular in modern culture. I should specify that. And that, of course, presented its own challenges. But I do remember like those early soccer games where the kids would run around for 20 minutes and then out comes the bag of pirate's booty and Go-Gurts, and you might get some sliced oranges in there, and that's
Little Debbie's.
I haven't seen that one. That one's a new one for me, and it's and that was
I have.
Wow, yeah.
That was always challenging to navigate because your kid feels like it's this prize that they have earned, right? And then, but I look at it and I'm like, these are not foods that are generally part of our approach. And so, and now my younger son, who is 8, is seeing that same thing pop up at the end of soccer games. And, on one hand, I think that we should accept all food with grace and gratitude, and then a little bit Debbie now and then is not a bad thing. But man, it doesn't taste all that good compared to, say, a homemade muffin. And so for our part, those kinds of post-game snacks, our kids would pick out, and then they would slowly, disappear once they got home. And we would have a real food lunch. So that was kind of how we navigated those post-meal snacks. Even now, I'm not a huge fan of providing snacks after soccer games. I'm not a fan of that at all. I think that should be families serving their own children. But we have a lot of cultural.
So wait, let's pause there.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I just want to. I think we should talk about that for a minute, because I know that's a huge thing that parents are dealing with. I know my daughter did T-ball last year, and the T-ball games were it was like every other day for a month and a half. It was either practice or a game. So it was like a super intense, short amount of time, but it was really in every other day. It's a lot. She was 6 at the time, and there was this whole snack thing, and everybody's like, well, you bring snack this day and you bring snack this day. And it was always a bag of Doritos, or, there was never anything
substantial.
They've just, first of all, there's 30-minute T-ball games. They're not exactly exercising all that much.
Can we talk about that?
Okay,
I want to say something about that. I think it's kind of ridiculous that if a child is outside and does a little bit of movement, which kids are moving all day long, but right? That they don't stop moving. Okay. But if they are outside doing a sport, okay, whatever, for 30 minutes to an hour, and then all of a sudden we feel like we have to feed them. Yeah. I just think it's a little bit ridiculous.
Well, especially the game is at 5:00. So you're done at 5:45. It's dinner time. We don't need to be eating a bag of chips and then go home and eat dinner.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Okay. So Jenny, would you talk about how you, handled that for your children?
Yeah, for our children. So I always want to be mindful not to create any, issues around food or food restrictions. We tend to follow Ellen Satter's model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but parents are in charge of what to eat and when, and children decide how much.
Absolutely. We love that.
Yeah.
I think is a great model. And so when our kids were given these snack packs, we accept them with, grace and gratitude. And I'm so thankful that anyone wants to feed me or my family. I understand that they're part of these new cultural traditions that we have in America around sports. I may not be a fan of them, but I'm not going to make them go away either, right? I don't have that power. So what I would do is I would let the kids pick at it in the car on the way home. Usually it doesn't taste as good as the food we make at home. That Pirate's Booty is not as good as homemade popcorn popped in bacon fat or coconut oil and served with real butter and nutritional yeast. It's just not as good. And so they would have a few bites, and usually it would get, left in the back of the car, and I'd toss it out. And then when it was my turn to bring, I opt for these kind of middle ground foods let me see grass-fed beef sticks. I'll put in there, grass-fed cheese sticks, and apple. I try to go as whole foods based as I can, while still respecting kind of the cultural norm of the relative team. And that seems to be a good middle ground approach for us.
What do you think, Christine?
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I definitely, right now my kids are not doing soccer, and we're not doing any sports that require a snack during or afterwards. But when they were doing soccer, it was very similar. Each family would take turns providing a snack for a week or, a game or a practice. I would bring probably pretty much the exact same thing that you were talking about. I might have been a little bit more, Corey knows this about me, I might have been a little bit more strict about the snacks. Like we would accept it, and then I would probably just throw it away. Like they most likely were not given an opportunity to eat it, because it was things like chips or I definitely saw fruit roll-ups. I'm trying to think, there was the Little Debbie thing. Definitely did not see Little Debbie's, but for sure
there's like a Little Debbie that looks like a baseball, and that I think is like parents are like, oh, it's so cute, and it's like, themed, and I get that. I totally get that, inclination as a parent. You're like, oh, my kid's gonna love it because looks like a baseball. So that's where the Little Debbie's comes in. It may only be that it's a baseball thing. I've never seen one that looks like a soccer ball or a basketball or anything like that. So
don't
maybe
give
just
any
because
ideas.
we're playing baseball over here, right? I don't think anybody from Little Debbie's listens to our show, Christine.
No, I know.
I don't think that's a problem. Okay, so I'm curious though, because like when we went, I would either bring whole fruit, or I would bring like bags of, excuse me, what's that called? Lesser Evil popcorn. The one that's made with coconut oil.
Yeah.
And they make them in smaller bags. Yeah. But I'm curious, like, how did it go over to offer the kids meat sticks and stuff? The other kids, not your kids, right. The other kids.
My kids were stoked. But no, for the other kids, like the other kids, I never saw anybody complain, right? I saw the kids get excited that they had a bag of goodies as a reward for having played soccer. I saw the kids, munch down on the beef stick. So whether it's a nice like grass-fed beef stick or a Slim Jim, like they're fundamentally the same thing in terms, from a kid's perspective.
Okay, true.
We know that there's a difference, in the quality, let's say. And, who knows, maybe the snacks that I packed ended up in the, half eaten in the back seat, just like the snacks everybody else packed for my kid. Which brings me to another point, that I don't think that we really need to be offering snacks culturally after these exercises and games anyway. But it's a bit like, the birthday gift bags, that you give to guests of your child when they come to the party. Right. It's all this like tiny little plastic trinkets that gets, thrown away eventually anyway. But culturally, it's an expectation. So.
Right? Like I honestly... It is. I completely agree with you. I'm at the point where I'm like, I'd rather just give your kid a $5 bill and be like, thank you for coming to the birthday party. Because
seriously.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of, I'm so sorry for my strong words, but it's a bunch of crap made in China that literally will end up in a landfill.
Yes. Yeah. Or it just like gets scattered around your house and you have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you get
I know. So here's where I think there's a little bit of a fine line with the snack stuff. And I completely agree. Like if it were up to me, we don't need snacks, period. Every family can feed their own kids. And oftentimes, like Corey mentioned earlier, this is before a meal time. And so you're just going to go home and eat a meal anyway. You don't need a snack before a meal. But sometimes I think, well, maybe some of these children are children that are on a blood sugar roller coaster to begin with. And after burning all of the glucose, because maybe previously they had a high carb meal, then realistically, they do need something else to fuel themselves. And so that's like the one caveat where I feel it is slightly nuanced. Some of these kids might not have as the long-lasting energy that my kids have, because, they eat 3 square meals a day. They're not snacking all day. And their meals are, protein and fat-based with some carbs. But that's not how every American child eats. They are on the blood sugar roller coaster. So that's where I don't know. Maybe we do need snacks for them.
I think that's a really good perspective. That, we don't know what things are like in somebody else's home, what children are eating on the regular. I think we can surmise. So maybe you're right. I think that that's a really good perspective. So we can only do as good as we can do, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about focusing on our own families, so we can't control what other families are doing. And that's none of our business. But so all we can do is man our own ships, and how do we make sure that our own children are fueled through a practice or a game or a what are the other things called, like meet or what are those other terms?
I don't know, competitions or
day of a lot of exercise.
Well, in our family, we focus on like breakfast. Like if you can get a decent breakfast, everything else kind of falls into place, right? So on big days, before a game, we would often start with a pretty hearty breakfast. And early on, like back when my older son was very small, my husband would also ski, and he would take fish roe in the morning before he would go ski because he felt it. It's good, like salmon roe, ikura. You can get it frozen online, and he felt it was like really good fuel for him, and it's so nutrient dense. And so often, especially when he was little, our breakfast might consist of scrambled eggs, cooked in butter, topped with a little creme fraiche, some herbs, and like a spoonful of salmon roe, maybe some cooked up potatoes or a slice of sourdough bread, usually avocado. It was pretty nutrient dense and pretty satisfying. And I'm sure I'm getting a lot of eye rolls from your listeners right now. Okay, you want me to get salmon roe to feed my kid on Saturday morning? I'm not saying that's right for your family. I'm just saying that that's what we did. And it worked really well. Or sometimes it would be a hash with leftover roast meat. And so there would be potatoes with leftover roast meat, a fried egg, and then I would usually make like a sauce to go on top of it, like a hollandaise. And you're talking, good grass-fed butter with all that K2. You're talking, egg yolks with the choline. And then, of course, the grass-fed meat, which is loaded with protein. And so that's how it would work in the mornings, especially for on game days. And, most days we homeschooled for the most part. And so we had the time to devote to a nourishing breakfast. And I realize not everybody has that luxury. And so that's what we would do. And then usually that would be enough to get through like a morning game. And then we would go out for lunch, or we would have lunch at home once the game was finished, right? Like a real solid meal. And that's when they're little. When my older son grew up, and I did my best to provide him with a good breakfast. But kids, especially when they're teenagers, they have their own lives independent of you, or at least they imagine that it's independent of you. And so getting a solid breakfast into that kid was tough in like the last 4 years. On the weekends, yes. So I would just load him up on the weekends. But during the weekday, he deprioritized that. But we would still emphasize really nutrient dense meals otherwise, grass-fed bison fajitas and, chili with all the stuff in it. And then also one tip that I really love is the inclusion of beet kvass specifically for athletes, or beet juice. It's great for muscle recovery, and there's actually a lot of research on this. It has to do with nitric acid, and beets specifically, not just a fermented beverage, right? Specifically beets. It's less about the fermentation here and more about the beet itself, because beets are a source of a natural source of, I want to say, nitrate, right? Which turns in, which your body metabolizes and actually helps to support like lung and heart health. So what the researchers have discovered, specifically related to beet juice, is that it helps speed up muscle recovery, and it helps, especially in like long distance runners, to drink beet juice regularly because it increases lung capacity. And so that's one thing that I was always trying to give my kid was beet juice. Sometimes it was a yes, oftentimes it was a no, especially as he got older. When he was little, he loved it. But things change when you're
would you juice it?
Yeah, I would do both ways. So either I would make beet kvass and ferment the beets and then drink the resulting brine, or if I didn't have kvass going, I would juice it and often mix beets with, say, apple, ginger, lemon. It's actually really tasty.
Yeah, that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question because you were talking about breakfast, and you said your kid did club leagues, right, or club level sports. Did you guys ever travel? Were you ever like gone for a weekend to play games? And if so, like how did you handle feeding your kid when you're in a hotel or something?
Okay, that's yes, we traveled a lot. There were a lot of tournament weekends in a lot of hotels, and it was very challenging, right? Very challenging. So we would book rooms that had like a kitchenette maybe, or at least like a mini fridge and a microwave to make it a little more accessible. I would usually prep ahead by bringing like homemade yogurts, some good quality cheese, greens for salads. And there was one particular weekend where I brought I want to say, I have a blender that cooks at the same time. And I brought my blender that cooks, and I was able to make like a, pureed soup with broth and things like that. That's probably overkill. But it's what we did, truly. Or we would bring sourdough bread and, homemade chicken salad, homemade tuna salad, and we would have sandwiches. So at least maybe one meal or two meals, one meal a day would be pretty nutrient dense. Other than that, we would look for restaurants that kind of that were more in alignment with the kind of food that we like to serve our family. So it might be, a really good ramen joint because at least you're getting good quality broth, long simmered broth there. Mm-hmm. It might be, a seasonal restaurant. It might, we would avoid the fast food as much as possible, or try to encourage, a team meetup at a restaurant that serves more whole food options, as opposed to let's all meet up at the local fast food burger joint,
I'm wondering, what is this blender that cooks?
Okay.
You just want to put that in the show notes?
Yeah, seriously.
It's ridiculous. Years ago, I went to some sort of conference and they had a Thermomix. Actually, okay, so this goes way back.
Yes. You right? Have un Thermomix, let me tell you.
So years ago, when I was doing my recipes, people would be like, especially readers from Australia would be like, how can I do this in a Thermomix? And I'm here in America. And I'm like, well, what's a Thermomix? So finally, they started marketing them in the US. I bought one, and it is a blender that has all these heating functions in it. So you can boil things in it, you can steam things in it, you can puree things in it, and it has, I'm sounding salesy, but it has a function where there's all these recipes up in the cloud, and you're like, I'm going to make their carrot soup or whatever, and then it just guides you along. You press a touch screen, and it's like, add a pound of carrots, add 2 quarts broth or whatever. So I would bring that, and we would,
oh wow,
because it's compact, it's the size of a blender, and stick it on the counter and cook. That was overkill, I'm telling you. I probably wouldn't do it again, but it was cool.
I mean, this is like, I hear people bring, Instant Pots to their hotel and stuff, which, I mean, if that's your style, more power to you. That seems like overkill to me. It would be way more stressful.
Right.
To me, to be handling all of that. But like when we travel to, if we go away to a theme park or something, like we used to go to Universal all the time, I had a whole plan of like, here's what I'll bring. And I'm one of those people that like, if I have a plan written down and it like, I like worked out all the kinks and I had it written down. So like every time we went, I would do exactly the same thing because then I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. And I think if you were doing, if you knew that your kid had a tournament every weekend or every other weekend or something, if you could have that sort of worked out and then just do the same thing every single time, it would probably be easier. Now, mine was like, we would make sandwiches, like I wasn't cooking in my hotel room, but I would bring enough food that it would feed us, I think, 2 meals, and then we would eat out 1 meal. And so I feel like that would probably work for the same sort of situation if you're on a club level team. I know my brother played club level baseball, and my parents were always traveling, always. So I know that that's a lot on people.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine also then having to like remember to cook something in your hotel room. That, I don't know, to me that would be very stressful.
I mean, okay, so I have memories. I traveled a ton for my sport in high school, and I have memories of there were team moms, and we stayed in hotels. I think this is before Airbnbs. So we would stay in hotels and they would go to the grocery store and buy insane amounts of food and coolers. And they would travel with the coolers. So we would bring the coolers on the airplane. I don't know.
On
They
the
would
airplane?
Yeah, they would like check them or something. I don't know. And then buy ice and fill the coolers with, I mean, all of it was like conventional foods, but we always had like bagels and cream cheese for breakfast and lunch meats and cheeses and hard-boiled eggs. I think they would just buy them already hard-boiled. But there was always a room where the team moms had crap tons of food, and you could go and eat, whatever you wanted. And I think also, now we have the convenience of Airbnbs. So if we are traveling, I don't know about you guys, but I usually will I'll definitely bring my own knife set to an Airbnb because the knives are horrendous. And
Always.
I'll often bring a few other kitchen staples from my own personal kitchen. And, if I'm driving, I'll do all of those things.
They won't let you bring a knife set on the plane?
You can, if you're going to check it. You would just have to check it, but yeah. But I get that. So I feel like what I'm hearing is 2 meals from food that we provide ourselves, and then the third one eating out. And I think that's a very balanced approach to it. And for those of us that are already in this rhythm of eating this way, it almost feels second nature to us. Like, of course, we're going to bring a little bit of our own food. Of course, we're going to pack a jar of pate or, bring a stick of butter or something to feed our kids. And I think I just want to say as encouragement for moms that maybe aren't quite there yet, as Corey said, it gets easier. You just do it over and over and over again. And it ends up becoming second nature and you don't even think about it. Like you just know, oh, I got to pack food for this event, meat, whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, so let's talk about the difference between young athletes, like elementary to maybe middle school-ish, depending on where you want to draw the line, and then more teenagery sort of young adult sort of athletes. Like, what do you think the difference is between fueling those two different stages of athlete? Since you've been through both of those.
I would say on the offset, it's the sheer volume of food is the big difference.
Isn't that what every mom of a teenage boy says?
Like, I mean, people warned me about it and they're like, oh, they eat a lot as teenagers. The sheer volume of food blew me away. And so I would say, in terms of how do you feed a student athlete who's, 8 years old and just does his soccer practice a couple times a week versus, a multi-sport varsity athlete, the food is roughly the same, right? The volume is
The type of food.
right, is magnificently different. Okay. I would say that my oldest, at his peak was probably, he probably needed 3,500 to 4,000 calories a day, to fuel his body because he's 6'2", right? He was training, he was training like crazy, and then on the day he was training every 5 days a week, and often there would be a game on Saturdays or whatever, and then I would encourage him to take rest days, but like I said, he's happiest when he's physical, so on his rest days that meant a really long hike. um, so the sheer volume of food was the hardest to grapple with. And it took me, I guess what I want to say is that there was no noticeable point at which I realized he was eating a lot of food and I could make the conscious. It was slow, right? Because the bodies grow a little bit every day. But when he left to say go work at a camp counselor all summer, I was buying the same volume of food, and I'm like, wait a minute, it's not getting eaten as much. And that's when I really realized just how much he was eating. But for example, I think we all, as moms, we all are trying to squirrel away extra food for those in a pinch moments when you don't have time to cook. So you might make a double batch of chili, put half in the freezer, right? That's a classic technique. So I would do that, and then so I'd make a double batch of chili with plans to have the leftovers, and I'd go into the kitchen and there'd be no leftovers to be had. So the next time I'd be like, okay, instead of making it with like 2 pounds of ground bison, I'm going to make it with 3 pounds or whatever. And so then I can put it in the freezer, and I would go into the kitchen, and now all that is gone too. It was so much food. So that's the big one. Is ensuring that they have adequate food. And the other challenge is adapting to their schedule. So like my youngest son, for the most part, is on my schedule, right? We know that he has his soccer practice. He's getting ready to do a spring academy, which is going to be like Monday, Wednesday, a couple nights a week, plus a scrimmage on Friday. So 3 nights a week. I can plan ahead. I said, okay, slow cooker meal here. We'll pack sandwiches here, and we'll do, a pizza night at home on this day so that I can plan ahead, because it's all about good planning. But when your child graduates beyond the middle school years, they often are on their own schedule and their own trajectory. I mean, our goal as parents is separation, right? So navigating that was also difficult, because my son was, for the last 2 years at least, he was doing dual enrollment over at the local college. So that meant that he had a variable schedule there. He was also working periodically from time to time, with a local contractor to do some odd jobs. So his schedule was variable. And then, of course, the sports and the activities and the fun time with friends. And so I never quite knew what his schedule looked like, unlike, when they're younger. So one of the techniques that I used was I would do one big cooking session about every 4 to 6 weeks, okay, where I would make a massive amount of casseroles and, chilies and things like that freeze really well, stews, for example. And I would pack them into Pyrex containers, that would normally serve would normally serve 2 people, but for him it was 1 serving. And I would put them in the freezer labeled. And so then he could grab something nourishing, head to the local, to head over to the school, go into the student lounge and microwave it and heat it up. And then at least, he's eating, say, a homemade chicken noodle casserole as opposed to ramen, a cup of noodle over, bought from the local, student cafe or whatever. And so having that, once I came over that hurdle and realizing that I can't adapt to a schedule, making those foods accessible to him made all the difference.
Gosh, I feel like that's really good advice.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. That's brilliant. Then he just knows, it's already labeled, it's in the freezer for him, and he knows he can just grab it and go. That's a really good idea. And my follow-up question to that was going to be, do you have any recommendations for easy grab and go snacks aside from like the cheese sticks and the meat sticks? Did you ever make, I don't know, like bars or, trying to think, like granola bars or did you ever make any little snacky type things that were easy to just grab and go?
Right. Well, we always have like bread on hand, like a good quality sourdough and cheese that you can slap together. I think that's a really good one. I would make cookies with lower amounts of sugar than most cookie recipes call for, and that was a good one too for grab and go grab and go for quick energy, right? So that happened. We always had like kombucha available. I was a big fan of chocolate milk, actually, because a lot of studies show that post-recovery chocolate milk is very supportive of athletes. So we would make sure that it was grass-fed, good quality chocolate milk. So that was available. I didn't make that. I would buy that. And I always have ferments on hand, right? So a snack might look like grabbing, a pickle and wrapping it in some cheese, right? And munching that down, But as for like specific bars that I pack, I maybe did that once or twice. But that's not something that I typically do because we're not a big snack family in general.
Tallow is all the rage for ancestral healthcare, but the truth is lard is much more aligned with our skin and what it needs.
Lard is not only better absorbed by our skin, but it is also rich in vitamins A, D, and E.
Christine and I use farro in our daily skincare routine to help us hydrate, repair, and strengthen our skin's natural barrier.
Go to farro.shop and use the code AncestralMamas for 15% off. And just in case you missed it, that is farro.shop and use the code AncestralMamas for 15% off. Thank you for supporting our show. Macienda makes nixtamalized heirloom corn masa. They work with small farmers all throughout Mexico, and they use traditional agricultural practices. And so we like Macienda because they sell their corn masa in different colors and, throughout the US, or you can purchase directly from their website. They have blue corn, yellow corn, red, and white. And this is so that you can make your own tortillas at home. And you can use the code MAM, M-A-M 10 for 10% off. And if you don't want to make your own tortillas, they also sell tortillas on their website. So it's macienda.com and the code is MAM 10 for 10% off.
Sorry, my kids are being so loud in the background. I keep having to mute my mic and then I have to like come back in and mute it. And I'm sorry. Trying to just like shield the mic from their loudness.
I know.
I did want to ask you about, since we're on the topic of like specifically what are you eating or feeding them, can you talk a little bit about the proportions of macronutrients? So like what did you try and focus on to make sure that they were getting whatever the right proportion was?
So I never was a big fan. I never have the time or made it a priority to try to calculate macronutrients. I think for athletes who are really fine tuning their performance, that's a really smart approach, but it's not something that I prioritize. What I will say is that our meals always had a good quality protein, adequate fat, lots of veg, and then some sort of starch. So I would probably say like a 40-30-30, maybe, 40 complex carbs, 30 protein, 30 fat is if I had to guess. But again, I wasn't calculating macronutrients. And so that approach that was like lots of leafy greens, lots of green vegetables, starches in the way of, our starches were often like pulses, black beans, cannellini beans, whole grains, or say starchy veg like winter squash and sweet potatoes or regular potatoes, and then meat, chicken, lots of fish, salmon, and then grass-fed red meat. So that's our approach to food in general, and it seemed to work. When I would make specific meals for him, though, like I mentioned before, tucking them in the freezer, I would try to make them more calorie dense than I maybe would have otherwise. So if I'm making a cream sauce, I would use cream rather than milk because, again, like I said, he's probably needing 3,500 to 4,000 calories. So that would be a strategic goal, making those foods for him more calorie dense.
I find the tracking macros thing and like trying to make sure that it's like, I don't know, all planned out or all met is exhausting and I hate it. So I'm on that team too.
What about beverages? What are your thoughts on Gatorade or Powerade? Or how would you make sure that he was hydrated properly?
So for the littles, I make Switchel. For listeners who aren't familiar with Switchel, it is a traditional energy drink, for lack of a better word, that was often used by sailors and by farmers up until the middle late 19th century, and it consists of apple cider vinegar, powdered ginger, although you can use fresh, sea salt, and molasses mixed with water. And it tastes similar to like a ginger beer, but more sour and less sweet. And so I would make Switchel because I once ran the micronutrient calculation on that. It was similar to Gatorade in terms of the mineral load and the electrolyte load, but it didn't have any of the creepy stuff that I personally would rather avoid. And it's so easy to make, right? Switchel is so easy to make. So you just you take your powdered ginger, you mix it with the vinegar, you mix in some molasses and you stir it and add water. It's effortless. And so I make Switchel for the littles. And they really, really liked it.
Do you ever add salt to it? Did you say originally salt or no salt?
I do add salt, a tiny bit of salt.
Yes, you do add salt.
Yeah, okay. Like a pinch of salt.
Okay.
And you can add other juices to it, right? To add different flavors?
You certainly can. Like one of the ones that we do in the summertime is I'll add blackberry. I'll muddle the blackberry in with the ginger and then add all the ingredients in and then strain it out. Shrubs are another thing that I particularly like to do during the hot days. A Switchel is a type of shrub. It's a drinking vinegar. So I would mix fruit with herbs and or spices and let it macerate in vinegar. And then you mix it with equal parts of sweetener. So I tend to opt for honey in most cases. And you only use, so in the end you have like 1 cup of fruit infused vinegar, 1 cup of honey or 3/4 of a cup of honey, and you mix them together. And then you add a spoonful of that to say mineral water. So you're not drinking the shrub concentrate, which would be way too sweet, but you're adding it to other things. And so now you're getting all the wonderful polyphenols from that fruit. You're getting the minerals from, say, the molasses. You're, in the case of Switchel, and you're getting, whatever herbs you happen to have on hand. So ginger is a great one because it supports the digestive system. and it kind of acts as a catalyst for other herbs from an herbalist perspective. So that would be one for sure that I would do. And then again, like I said, beet juice and beet kvass when I could get my teenager to drink it.
Do you have a recipe for the switchel?
Yeah, you can go on to Nourished Kitchen, nourishedkitchen.com, and there is a recipe for Haymaker's Punch, which is switchel, another term for switchel. And there's also a blackberry switchel on there, which is so delicious. It's sweet and tart and fruity and really refreshing, like on a hot day. But this
is actually the first time I've heard of that.
They're the original energy drinks. It's really cool. Way back before the Gatorades. It's what sailors and farmers used.
Yeah, I think that's super cool. So what about, because you said your kid likes to hike, has he ever done like a backpacking hiking thing where he's like needed to bring, a significant amount of food, or what are those, like those gel, those gel things you like squeeze? You can buy those. Like, has he ever done that sort of thing where he has to kind of pack some stuff to take with him? And if so, like, did you help him find stuff to pack, or is he like going to the grocery store and just being like, forget what mom said, I'm going to just buy the runner's gel?
Right. Well, yes. So he is an avid hiker and would go on these really long hikes. And he's also a Boy Scout. So he's an Eagle Scout. So part of that is camping and hiking, right? Pretty extensively, backpacking. And so he was every month there was at least one backpacking activity that he went on, plus various hikes. In scouting, of course, at that level, they plan their own meals. And so he would try to encourage his group to make scrambled eggs, or, what else? Like he would bring a chili or something like that. But remember, this is a group decision. So it often ended up being, say, ramen with Spam. Okay. So that's where, grace and gratitude and letting go of perfection really does us all a service, is to sit down. Because I think sitting down at the table among friends is also nourishing, regardless of what's on that table. The practice is nourishing, of communing with people you love, or people who you're friendly with. That's its own form of nourishment. And so he did his best. Like, so if they were having ramen, he would pack some, kettle and fire broth. It's not as good as homemade, but it's a nice middle ground, let's say. And yes, for the gels, they totally did the gels. There's some that are better than others, like some honey-based ones. But that's me, where I just hold my hands up and say, sort it out.
Yeah.
We did an entire episode last year on that, where we talked about the importance of coming together and eating communally, and how much that affects us as humans. And it's not just about what we're eating, it's also about the relationship. So we totally agree with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Even though it can be really hard as the mom who like knows things, to not get sucked down into that little bubble of almost superiority is maybe a strong word, but like that's the only word I can think of right now,
Well, and knowledge, just like, oh my gosh, I know that this has high fructose corn syrup in it. What is this doing to my child, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I do think there's an element of superiority within that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think I agree. My kids were doing a scouting thing recently, or last year. And one of the things I found so strange was that it's not Boy Scouts. It's called, oh golly, what was it called? Trail Life. It's like a Christian version of Boy Scouts. And they were supposed to be going on these trips every couple of months. And it was, again, the same thing where they'd all like group plan these meals. And, my son only did it for about 6 months, so he never actually went on these things. But as they were talking about it, I kept thinking, like, one of your core values as a group is teaching your sons how to be healthy and how to have, to live healthfully for your faith, right? With your faith and all this. And so I kept thinking, like, I know that I have this knowledge. Maybe if my son gets to the point of being old enough to go on these trips, it's my job to step in and be like, okay, here's this knowledge that we can, put forth, because they're like talking about taking hot dogs and wrapping them in croissant things and then holding them over the fire, and my brain's going, oh my gosh. But, I think if it's one of those things where you feel like where it's important to you, maybe that's the pull on your heart to be the one to step in and kind of make an effort to change it, or at least add some knowledge to the base.
Yeah.
So now that you mentioned earlier, you've got a 19-year-old, and he's been eating this way since he was 9 months old. So essentially his entire life. And we're wondering how you've seen the transition of going from a 9-month-old to a 19-year-old. And really the biggest question is, number one, is it worth it? And all the effort that we put in as moms to make these nourishing foods. And number two, any advice or encouragement you want to give to parents out there trying to do the same thing?
Well, for my part, I would say that it's worth it. It's worth the effort, because not only are you cooking these nutrient-dense foods, you are also cooking with love and intention. And I think that comes through, I think that comes through the food. But in terms of the concrete, I'm so grateful that we chose this path of cooking, nutrient-dense whole foods and emphasizing those, because my kids are really healthy. They're really healthy, and often in ways that their peers are not. For example, my oldest son has perfect teeth, right? Like no cavities, room for his wisdom teeth. His teeth are completely straight. Like we took him to the dentist, and like she's calling people in because it's unusual, right, to have good quality teeth. And I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that we emphasize nutrient-dense whole foods throughout his childhood. Namely, these are foods that are rich in vitamins and minerals that help support systemic health. And part of that is, tooth and mouth health. And it also meant by emphasizing those foods, you naturally de-emphasize foods that are really bad for your teeth, like goldfish crackers and, Annie's bunnies and things like that get stuck right in your teeth. So, he's healthy. So I never had to pay for orthodontics or anything like that. Whereas most of his peers, had braces and were undergoing the pain that creates, as well as, the expense. When he gets sick, when either one of them gets sick, which doesn't happen too often, they tend to recover rather quickly, rather than having, say, a cough that lingers and lingers and lingers and lingers and lingers. So they recover quickly. Their bodies are strong. And as for my littlest, his peers, this is something I did not see with my oldest, right? But my youngest, who is 8 now, and this is a contrast from generation to generation, I suppose, is that a lot of his peers who are 7 and 8 years old are already going to the dentist and having to get crowns and teeth pulled and things like that. Or they're going to school and they're being prescribed medication for things like ADD and anxiety and things like that. And I will never, judge anybody who, I think that we're all trying to forge the best path for our children. And if you sincerely feel that that's what your child or your family needs, you have my support, but it's something that I didn't see in my generation. I didn't see it in my oldest generation, and I'm seeing it now with my youngest, where a lot of the kids are being medicated, and a lot of the kids have, are very young and having, their teeth pulled and root canals and things like that, that trouble me. But I will say, in the end, the question was, is it worth it? And for us, it was worth it. It was worth it because, for many different reasons. Not only are my kids super healthy and super strong, they've never been prescribed like even antibiotics because they've never had a need, right? Other than once after a dog bite, right? Like they're very, very healthy kids. But it was worth it for that because they're healthy, and I do attribute a lot of their health to the way they were raised. But also remember that coming to the table together as a family meant that we were connecting as a family. So beyond health and medication and teeth and orthodontics and all of those aspects, here we are coming together at the table as a family, connecting regularly several times a day with one another. And it meant that we grew close, we stayed close. There was always a listening ear. And also my kids learned to cook, which is helpful because now they can make certain things on their own, which is good. That's a good life skill. In the end, I would say it was worth it for us. And your mileage may vary, of course. Like we all come from different paths, but I would not hesitate to encourage you to take small steps in the direction that feels right and take the time to truly nourish your family. It's worth it.
That's beautiful. Is your oldest aware that he eats very different than his peers? And do you feel like he still prefers your food over, I don't know, a fast food joint or something?
That is a great question. That's a great question. So my oldest, is definitely aware that like our approach to eating is different from other families. He had never had, say, pretzel salad before. I don't know if you're familiar with this. It's like chopped up, rolled gold pretzels and strawberries and then a layer of Jell-O and like Cool Whip on top. Until he went to a friend's house, and he was being served that, and then like some Domino's pizza for a regular meal. There was no salad or anything like that, and it just kind of
it was a pretzel salad.
Right. Pretzel salad. It kind of blew his mind, and he was like, yeah, it was okay. But it was a cultural shock, I guess, coming from our family's culture to a different family culture. And I'm sure he sat down and enjoyed it because, pizza's delicious. And so it was definitely hard. And also, when you're with your friends and when you're trying to sort out your own identity, you may you may want to be like, yeah, I'm going to go for fast food or whatever. And there's been times when we're like, okay, so are you drinking Mountain Dew now? Like what gives, And I'm not going to worry about it. I can only like serve wholesome meals and pack the freezer for him. He's going to decide what else he's going to do. But one thing of note is that we also have a lot of friends who also eat nutrient-dense foods. So he didn't feel quite so alone in that respect. But say when he went to be a camp counselor for the first time at the local Boy Scout camp during the summer, right? And that means that they work long hours outside in a physically demanding job, and they're eating whatever the camp kitchen is going to serve up. So that means a lot of fruit cocktail, a lot of canned veg, a lot of, fried, questionable meat. And that poor kid, he came back to visit for a weekend after about like 3 weeks. And he's like, oh, my muscles keep cramping. And he's starting to experience these effects like muscle cramps and this feeling of depletion. And of course, he's not going to be able to cook a grass-fed beef stew while he's working as a camp counselor in the summer camp, So I sent him with as much as I could, like, some good quality cod liver oil, some, a good quality greens powder, some, mineral support. And well, it's ideal to get that from food. Supplements are there to supplement when you can't, right? So that helped in that instance. Or he's on a gap year this year. And so he's been working at a ski area where, again, he's in employee housing, and they also have an employee food plan that he's on. And he's, it's delicious because it's things like fried chicken sandwiches every night. But he comes home this last week and we sat down to a real meal. We had some grilled mahi-mahi, we had red cabbage slaw, and all these beautiful, wholesome foods. And he just sat down and he says, I am just so grateful to be at this table and have at this meal, for this food. And he said that he didn't quite understand it, and he felt like maybe he took it for granted growing up. But now being on his own a little bit has given him the perspective of what it means. So that's what I have to say. It's complicated. Pretzel salad, though. I bet it's tasty.
There's this there's an Instagram influencer, creator, whatever, who does these. She's called like the Midwest Mom or something like that, and her whole feed is like making these Jell-O salads. It's hysterical. And she like always has these curlers in her hair. Anyway, total side note, but like I don't even follow her. I just think like anytime it like comes up on my feed, pure joy to watch. They're just hilarious and very, very fun, and not salad at all. Even though sometimes they have like lettuce in the Jell-O or something, I'm always like, what? Oh my God. Okay. So I think we've covered. Is there anything else that you feel like you need to add to the conversation, Jenny?
Let me think. No, I think we covered most things. We talked about, how about we talk about injury support? Because I think that's something important.
Oh yeah, that is a great idea.
Yeah.
Have you experienced any injuries with your children?
Yes. So when you're as athletic as my kids are, they're bound to come down with injuries. There was, a sprained wrist at one point, which was one thing, pulled hamstring. But probably the worst was when my son broke his foot. He was playing soccer and like tripped in a hole or something like that, and developed a Jones fracture in his foot. And that necessitated him being in a cast for quite a while, or a boot. And it was really hard for him because, like I said, he's such a physical kid. Being able to hike and play soccer and ski and just be physically present in the world is important to him. And it helps support his mental health. And so being in a boot and laying on the couch while your buddies are out hiking and playing soccer is hard. So I think mentally that was a really difficult time for him. But also we did our best to help nourish him through that time. And we worked with, we talked to his doctor about that, like what nutrients do we need to use to support him? What can we do to avoid surgery? And so one of the things that I really found to be very helpful for him was, I want to say Thorne, the supplement company, has a great supplement for bone health. It's like bone nutrients, I want to say. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure you can go on their website and figure out the one we used. It was calcium and various nutrients for the bone, and emphasized a lot of brothy soups for all the collagen, as well as mineral-rich foods during that time. And thankfully, he didn't need surgery and he healed his foot just fine, but that was a really hard time. And I think anytime you do injure your body, it's probably a time to reset, reconnect, and think it through, right? Are you training too hard? Are you training cold? Are you doing these other things that might contribute to injury? And sometimes flukes happen, but there are key nutrients that you can focus on during the energy recovery process. And that's what we did.
And how did you, or did you do anything to kind of help him through that emotionally and mentally? Because like you said, it was a really hard time for him to be kind of laid up.
Yeah.
And was there any way that you kind of like helped him work through that?
Yeah, it was hard for him. But fortunately, his grandma had planned to come out, so she was coming out. And so she kept him really, really entertained while she was here. She was out for several weeks. So they did all sorts of fun things that had nothing to do with, like, that didn't require the physical exertion, right? So they, went to an animal sanctuary. They went and did fun things in the city, and so we invested in distraction a lot, and we backed off on complaining about screen time. Like, maybe you shouldn't be on your phone so much, because it helped. And fortunately, and we encouraged him to rest as much so that he could heal, as did his, healthcare providers. I also emphasized like brain healthy nutrients at that time. So like say omega-3s, and nootropic herbs. And then fortunately, by the time the high school soccer season started up, he had recovered from his injury and was fine. So that was good.
You said his grandmother came out. I just like immediately pictured the grandfather from Princess Bride reading the book to his grandson. Okay. I think we've covered almost everything that we wanted to cover. Christine, do you have anything else you wanted to ask?
No, we got everything.
Okay, Jenny, can you tell us what books you have, maybe like a elevator pitch on each book that you've written, and then where people can find them, where they can connect with you, all of that stuff?
Yeah, so I run nourishedkitchen.com, which is devoted to traditional whole foods and heritage cooking. My first book is The Nourished Kitchen, and it is all about intensely seasonal cooking, and talks about sourdough breads, broths, seasonal vegetables, and grass-fed meats. Great all-encompassing cookbook. Follow-up to that was Broth and Stock, which is specifically about nourishing broths. And then my third cookbook, which is probably my favorite, is called Vibrant Botanicals. And it is all about the culinary use of medicinal herbs and the medicinal use of culinary herbs. So it takes you through, say, how to start your morning with energy, herbs that help to nourish the digestive system, and herbs to lift your mood or help you sleep, and how to use those in your kitchen to make really delicious foods. And you can find them all.
Can I side note this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, we got to side note it for just a second. I know people are going to be wondering how the heck you managed to write 3 cookbooks and homeschool and like do kids sports. Can you just like short little answer to that? Probably a whole episode, actually.
I'm exhausted. I am exhausted. That's the truth. I'm exhausted. No, I have a really supportive partner who can take the lead on things when I have to focus on a project. And I'm so grateful for my husband, because we really, truly are a partnership and work together for our family. And that's how it gets done. So
that's beautiful.
Shout out to your hubby.
Yeah, he's awesome. Grateful.
Okay, so all your books are available on Amazon. Mm-hmm. Your website is nourishedkitchen.com. What about your socials? Do you want to give that too?
Yeah, you can follow me at Nourished Kitchen on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest. Probably Instagram is where I'm most active. And then, of course, we have a rockin' awesome newsletter. So you can sign up for that on at nourishedkitchen.com. Lots of recipes and tips and things like that.
Awesome.
And as usual, we will put all of these in the show notes so you guys can find them.
Yep. And again, I want to say, if you're listening, thank you so much. Take, a couple minutes to go rate and review the show on wherever you're listening or watching. We're on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts and probably anywhere else that you get podcasts. And that's just a really easy and absolutely free way for you to support our show. So if you like our show, please take the time to do that. You can follow Christine at Nourish the Littles. You can follow me at For Nutrient's Sake, and you can follow the show at Modern Ancestral Mamas. What else? That's it.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you for listening. Jenny, thank you so much for joining us and talking about raising healthy athletes. We appreciate you, all of your work, and appreciate your time coming on.
Well, I'm so grateful to have chatted with you. Thank you.